Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffy Kennedy, also writing as Jennifer K. Lambert, author of epic fantasy romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. It's delicious. Today is Wednesday, July 29th. Last podcast of July. Uh, we are finally getting rain here in Santa Fe. The monsoon rains have finally started kicking in. So, well, things aren't quite greening up. It's taking a little bit. We got seriously baked there, and not in a happy stoner way. But hopefully, my garden will eventually recover. And I am very exciting news for me having a new gate installed today. And I think by the time I upload this podcast, I might be able to include a photo of the new gate. So, for those who don't know, and maybe I'll have to do like some before and afters on Instagram or something. I have what's called the secret garden, which is a walled garden, sort of behind the house. But one of the walls faces the driveway and the road. Uh, it's sort of beside the garage, and it is a wooden gate set into the adobe wall frame. Well, it's faux adobe, Disney adobe, plaster and lattice stucco kind of thing. Uh, but it looks like adobe. Um, and the gate has pretty much since we bought this house and moved in. I mean, the house is 30 years old now. I keep thinking of this as a new house, but it's not. So, but that gate, like it drags and it catches on the little gravel things, and it is a pain to latch. And I've needed to replace it for a while. The hinges are, like did I mention 30 years old? So anyway, I had been trying for a while to get a new gate, and what I really wanted was instead of wood, which looks fine and matches in some ways, I wanted like wrought iron, right? I wanted something where you can actually see into the secret garden, kind of like in New Orleans, right? Where you can see through those gates into the courtyards and you get this glimpse of how pretty it is. Because even struggling along without water, the secret garden is really pretty and lush, and there's a huge lilac right there, and the grape arbor is right there, and I'm excited for this thing. So I created a design, and it is, I want to say, reminiscent of, drawn from Never the Roses and Among the Thorns, and I'm excited for you all to see it. I'm excited for me to see it. So dun, dun, dun. Yeah, hopefully it'll be amazing. In other news, I am kind of getting back into a routine finally. I've got over 30,000 words on Never the Roses 3. Um, I book release, book tour kind of slowed me down, which I did allow for, and I'm trying to be zen about that. And then I have to like ramp up again, but it is what it is, right? So I'm actually doing better this week than I have, I think, all month maybe. So, and that's with only 2 days down this week. So that's good. I'm getting my getting back into shape, right? Uh, I had to. I'd hit a chapter before book release and book tour that bogged me down, and I try not to get bogged down. People ask me a lot about how I deal with writer's block, and I say I don't believe in writer's block, which I actually don't. And just to be very clear about this, because I know that like not all of you have been listening to me forever, I think that there are multiple levels to the thing that people call writer's block, which is why I don't believe in it. I don't think that there is a particular block that writers get, right? I think there's a number of different things that people like to throw into that kettle, and that it's not useful because you're not addressing what the actual problem is because you're throwing it into the stew. And so we don't know, like, is it the carrots? Is it the potatoes? Is it the fact that the meat is too old? Is it the fact that you used a stock that's too weak, right? It gets lost in the stew. It becomes meaningless, right? So you could say, oh, well, it's because the stew is bad, but we don't know why the stew is bad, right? So I think that the first things to rule out with any kind of feeling like you can't write, like you've gotten bogged down and the words aren't coming, first thing to rule out is the physical, mental, emotional, right? That like, are you healthy? Are you struggling with depression or anxiety? Because those things very often get in the way of being creative. I often talk about Maslow's pyramid of needs as being a really useful lens through which to view these things, because you have to make sure that um, the base of your pyramid is handled before you can ascend to the creative part of the pyramid, right? So, are you secure in your food and your housing? Uh, do you have what you need to feel safe? If you don't have these things in place, it's really hard to scale up to being creative. So yeah, physical well-being, emotional stuff, uh, and those are things that you address, right? So, one thing that Kelly Robson, my friend, and I talk about a whole lot is that writing takes a lot of emotional energy. And if your emotional energy is going to other places, it's really hard to have any for writing. So you have to handle that. If those things are handled, then it's kind of like you figured out that your ingredients are fresh, because we're back to the making stew analogy. You've made sure your ingredients are fresh, you've used the right stock, you've got the right combination, but somehow the stew isn't coming together. And that's when it gets a little bit more interesting, because it's like, okay, well, what do you need? Does it need to simmer longer? Do you need to add certain spices? Do you need to rethink your recipe? I know a fair number of writers who say things like that when they get stuck in the story, then they know that they have reached a blind alley, that they went the wrong way, and they need to go back and change directions. And to this I say no. Nay, I say. Uh, what I think is, at least for me, because I do think you have to figure out your own signals, your own process. You have to know when you slow down, what does that mean? And it can mean several things for me. But very often for me, if I have hit a part where I'm feeling bogged down, where I hit a wall, I keep chipping, because that means that there's something good here. There's something that I need to dig out, that I need to excavate and find. Um, Sometimes it means that I have lost my threads, because there's always a certain point in my drafting where I feel like I need to go back to the beginning and revise from the beginning and work through. And I can generally tell when that is. There's a different kind of feeling of skidding to a stop, and I don't know where the story's going next. And I mean, I never know where the story's going next, but it's a different feeling of, like, it's just there's a vacancy there, an absence, and I need to go back to the beginning and gather up my threads again. In this case, what I needed was expert help, and I don't want to spoil it, but I did throw out a question on social media saying that I needed help from someone who could talk to me about abstract math, imaginary and irrational numbers. And for those of you who are big fans of Never the Roses and Among the Thorns, which thank you very much, uh, you will be able to guess why I need to know this. But so I put it out on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Threads, basically saying, let me read out my actual question. Okay, so I feel like it's, I mean, maybe spoilery, but it's on social media, so you get what you get. I asked, who do I know that can talk to me about sophisticated mathematical theory around irrational and imaginary numbers and equations? And the reason that I asked it this way was because I needed to be able to talk through this. Like, I know up through calculus and biochemistry, I understand a fair amount of mathematics as it applies to neurophysiology, but I don't really know abstract numbers, abstract math, imaginary numbers. I know what they are, but I don't know how to solve my plot problem, how my character could use these to solve their problems, and I needed to talk it through. So, um, interestingly, I will jump to the TLDR. Too late. My best answer came from Facebook. Right? It's always like I got like no, almost no engagement. A couple people like reposted it on Blue Sky, but otherwise no engagement on Blue Sky. I keep wanting Blue Sky to happen. I want it to be a fetch, and it's just not. Facebook, I got a number of comments. A few, for some reason, this question brought out the wise asses, and I got several jokes. But one person who I knew in high school told me that his son does abstract math and research and was willing to connect me. And so the short version of this story is that I ended up texting with this son who was an utter delight. I mean, I love this guy. I love this guy. I mean, he obviously could be my son, and I've never met him in real life, but he was so engaging, and he really embraced the question and helped me solve the problem. And one of the things that I loved about him, and I think I love this about younger people in general, is that they have so much less. I don't know if it's less misogyny, if it's less sexist bias. I mean, he knew that he was talking to a female high school friend of his dad's, right? I don't know how much else he knew about me except that, like, I write novels. Uh, he didn't treat me like I was dumb, which I half expected, and which some of these threads were the worst for bringing out, like, reaching people who I don't know and would just say snarky things. So I'll read you a few of these threads comments. Well, one person said, I got you, call me. And then, matter of fact, video chat, we're going to need a whiteboard, lol. And I was like, I'm sorry, do I even know you? Which, no, I don't. Um, Someone replied, so who do you know that can talk to you about equations? Did anyone guess right? Which is just like, what, this was an opportunity to be snarky. And it so I actually answered that one because, yeah, it turned out I knew several people who could talk to me about this. Like, they think they're picking apart my etymology, my phrasing, like I didn't ask the right question. It's like, oh no. Someone said lots of universities publish course notes online. Some intro to number theory, I'm sure. If you want complex analysis, I'd learn a good amount of analysis first so you're not totally lost. Uh, and it's like, okay, so you paid no attention to what I'm asking for, right? I already know a fair amount of higher math, just not how to solve this particular problem. And then there were a couple of jokes, more like math jokes, which I don't know why this brought out the math joke people. Some people told me that I could watch videos with visualizations on the topics. Uh, Someone said math is a hoax, and I don't know if that was just like a way to be witty or something. Uh, Somebody said you might be shocked at how good the AIs are at explaining mathematical theory, which, A, yes, I would be shocked since the AIs uh, are garbage out and often get things wrong, and also does not solve my problem. Like, why would you even say this? Um, Somebody wrote on there, "Are you people serious?" And I don't know if that was in response to the snarky comments or what. Um, Somebody sent me a video that was like how imaginary numbers were invented, and they said, "You will enjoy this," and it's like, um, will I? And I don't care because that's not answering my question. So anyway, the delightful son of my high school friend treated me like an intelligent person. Perhaps his dad, I mean, he and I were like in the honor classes and stuff together, so he might have said, she's not a math idiot, but um, he, yeah, you know, explained things to me in a way that was easy for me to understand and actually illuminated. I like realized that I had ideas about this already, and he helped me connect those dots. And he's going to be in the acknowledgments, and I sent him copies of the books, and it was amazing. So that was really cool, and I was glad that I did it when I did. I had considered doing my usual drafting process. One way to get around getting bogged down was bookmarking and skipping. I thought, well, I could just write that he gets himself out of this situation and now he has the tools to do this thing that he needed to do. Um, and I kept writing. And maybe I should have done that, but I felt very strongly that I needed to solve this problem. It's a big part of the character arc. I think it's going to strongly affect how the rest of the book plays out because it has to do with how the magic is applied, which is like how problems are solved and how enemies are defeated and so forth. So, while I will advise very often that you not spend a lot of time on world building, because I do think this falls squarely within world building. It's like, how does the magic system work, right? And this was like, how does this magic system work in a different circumstance? Uh, while I will often advise to get the story in place first, because I think world building can be a real displacement activity. I think that if you really, really love world building, it is easy to spend all of your creative time filling up the file cabinets with world building stuff and not actually writing the story. And so I will often say, like, don't worry about naming the place, or don't worry about, um, I don't know, what the weather is, what season it is. I sometimes have my stories take place in one season, and by the end of the book, I've figured out what season it needs to be, and I change it. Uh, because for me, most of the time, it doesn't matter that much. But for the things that really matter for the story, and this is when I do my master class on world building from a character driven perspective, this is what I'm getting at. Because you want to look at the world building that's actually going to affect what happens to your characters. So, like, it may not matter if it's summer or winter if your characters are living in a nice house and never go anywhere. If you are trying to move an army through a landscape, then it is going to matter if it's summer or winter, right? Like, how difficult is moving them through it? Uh, if I hate to use politics because I think politics always affects things, um, but let's say if it doesn't matter to your characters whether it's a democracy or a monarchy, which I would argue it pretty much always does, but let's just say that, like, it's a small story, they're doing, I don't know, rebuilding a castle in some part of the country. It doesn't really matter who's sitting on the throne, right? Uh, Except that it always matters. But you don't necessarily have to nail down the political system for every story. Um, The magic system, a lot of times the magic system's nebulous and it may not really matter to the story. It's like, oh, well, everybody has a little bit of magic, or everybody's psychic, or everybody can shift into a different animal, everybody can shift into a werewolf, and then that's determines certain things. But how your characters employ magic can strongly affect the story, right? What are they able to do? And I know, like a lot of superhero stories, their origin points come from, like, well, things like, what if we had Superman battle Batman? What can they each do? What are the flaws in each? And those are like fun thought problems for people, right? Like, how would they battle each other? Who would win? What advantages would they each have? What would be the downfall for each of them. So sometimes you have to get these things figured out along the way, and you learn it over time, which I know is like not terribly helpful. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I will continue to write this week, and I will talk to you all next week. You all take care. Bye bye.